make no mistake. They have a Mercedes-Benz 190e Evolution 2. Wow! I didn't know about that actually, and since I own a Mercedes-Benz 190e myself, and to be honest, the Mercedes-Benz 190e Evolution 2, the longer the name, the cooler the car, is basically the wet dream of every 190e driver with any kind of motorsports ambition, you know? And so I really hope they get this car right. So if they do any error with it, I will definitely notice it, because I own a Mercedes, I go to the Nordschleife a lot, and well, we will see about that. So what I will do is take a video of my past track days, basically the best lap I've got so far, and do a side-by-side comparison between a replay, a real-life driving on the steering wheel with the game, and the real video footage I took from inside the car, where you will see the bonnet with the Mercedes star, and yeah, well, cut a little bit back and forth to get really every corner right, to get an impression on how the track looks, and maybe cut in some photos as well from yeah, well, obviously my car in this case, and we will see how this game compares to the real car. Alright, we are starting the lap on the Nordschleife here at the end of the Nürburgring Grand Prix track, coming to the first corner. The speed is in kilometers per hour around 140, breaking down to 90. Going here with 110. Complex combination of S-curves and a BMW M3 right in front of us, and he brakes because he notices we are quicker than them. Off to the Flugplatz. Going up to 170. With the rear car braking down to 160 kilometers per hour. And now straight to the Schwedenkreuz. Here we see the first difference between the game and the real car, because on the next corner with the real car at 170 I almost start to fly a little bit, and with the simulated car I'm still at 210 or 200 kilometers per hour, which in my opinion seems a little bit over the top. This corner here, the Schwedenkreuz, can be done with 120 almost. Now down the Fuchsröhre with 210 kilometers per hour. Braking hard into fourth with 160. Braking hard again into third with 130. Braking hard again into second. Going here with 70 kilometers per hour. Tires squeak all the time. Pushing as hard as I can. But the Mitsubishi is quite fast. It's really quite a fast car. Now coming up to Kallenhardt, there's one more curve. At Kallenhardt here, the next curve to the right, I crashed with my smart car actually. I went to the Nordschleife with a smart car a couple of years ago, which wasn't too bright actually. I increased the speed of the
real car video a little bit by a factor of 1.17 to match the exact same speed of the replay of the simulated car. And the simple reason is that I really wanted you to get an impression how the car feels on the track, how the track looks, how much stress it is to go on this track, and of course if the proportion is correct of the track and the braking points are at the same time. And to be honest, I am really impressed with what they've done here, because everything really fits perfectly together. There's no discrepancy between the two cars, there's no problem with the steering. I mean, we have a Mercedes-Benz 190e on the one hand and an Evolution 2 on the other hand. Both are the same model basically, they have the same steering mechanics. The motor is slightly different, one is a 4-cylinder 4-stroke engine and the other is a 6-cylinder straight. And I have to say, when I first went into this car, I was really impressed. I instantly won races just because I knew this is absolutely what I am driving, and it's hilarious. I like it. It's great. Perfectly modeled. The steering is just great. The engine sounds okay. There's just not enough tire squeak. Yeah, and off to the carousel. The carousel is actually a very difficult piece of track. It's made of, well, plates of concrete somehow put together into a very steep curve. And you're barely able to go around this part with 70 or 80 kilometers per hour. Some race cars definitely go faster there, but to be honest, if you go quicker, there's a very good chance that you slip out of this curve and just crash into the wall. And if you slip out of the curve, there is almost no chance to get the car right again. So if you ever go to the Nordschleife yourself, please be as awake as possible for this curve. Now, Hohe Acht to Eschbach to Brünnchen. The next curve is Brünnchen. Yeah, over the curb. Here, in both cases, full of people. Really cool. Usually on a sunny day, there are also a lot of caravans and a lot of people. And you can buy fries and sausage and everything, the barbecue stuff, you know. So full throttle, hard on the brakes, 130 this right corner, then a left with 150, and then still full on the throttle with this jump to the left, and it's really a jump. Then as hard as you can, just get the combination right and you don't have to lift off the throttle or even brake. Some guys brake here. I usually go full throttle on this. You can even shift into fifth and go to the corner we just saw with 180, but you have to brake before that. Here's the Schwalbenschwanz. Schwalbenschwanz is also very difficult, especially the exit, because my rear end of the car seems to lift off and starts to drift a little bit, and because there's so much traffic I had to pull over to let them pass. Definitely with 180 horsepower you're not the fastest guy on the track. There are so many other drivers and it's really hard to say who is the quickest driver. Because driving is not only how much horsepower you have on the Nordschleife, it really is how you drive. And what this game tries to do really works on the Nordschleife, at least in Time Attack, and we will come to this in just a second. And so I hope you like this little online comparison.
Basically, I started this comparison because I noticed a huge difference between the force feedback during time trial and a race. For some reason, the developers decided to change the force feedback values between these two race modes of driving modes, and on the race the force feedback is much stiffer, so you have a better feeling for the car. You have to work more on the steering wheel for some reason, and on time trial it's exactly the opposite. So what I noticed is that the wheel seems to be very light and almost, well, I wouldn't say non-existent force feedback, but it's way weaker for some reason. I'm a little bit confused on how the car reacts under high speed, because on my car I have a little spoiler on the back as well. I cannot go to Schwedenkreuz with 190 kilometers per hour. And on the car in the game with this huge rear spoiler, maybe that makes a difference, I can go around this corner with almost 210 or 205 kilometers per hour. I believe the downforce is a little bit incorrect on this matter. I got around the track quite nice, at least in my opinion. And to be honest, I have to say they really nailed the car to reality. I have just one complaint. Why can't I hear the tires except for when I'm braking? I mean, usually when you're in the car on the track day and you have to steer a lot and you go, like for example, from Hohe Acht to Brünchen, then you really hear the tires squeak. Usually you hear the tires all the time. You will hear the asphalt, you will hear the stones on the track, you will hear leaves and rubber from the tires. So why can't I hear the squeaking of the tires when I go around corners? It is a very essential part of the racing experience to hear tires squeak. Well, obviously the presentation is very good, so why not the sound? Most of the sound is good as well. Usually when you buy a stock car, you don't have the noise from the gearbox. And in this case, especially with the 190e Evolution 2, you have all the noise from a race car's gearbox, which doesn't make sense, but I don't care really, but you have to have the tire squeak. It's important. In my last review, I told you about how different graphic settings have no effect on the steering of the game. So I tried to do a different approach this time. How can I get a better driving experience from this game? And my solution was go to the game as if it is GTR Evolution. And what do I do in GTR Evolution? I mean, me personally, I always do time attack. So I remove all the other cars, just go on my own, get as much load of the CPU as possible, and then see what can be done. And suddenly I noticed the car reacts completely different. Why? Because the physics has more time on the CPU, because the processor doesn't have to calculate 24 cars and therefore 24 physics engines. So obviously there's more time for the processor to calculate one car. I decided, because I had to restart anyway, to overclock my CPU from a dual-core 2.6 GHz to a dual-core 3.0 GHz. And what happened was a completely different game. I mentioned earlier that this game might be CPU limited just a little bit, and what I now realize is that my CPU is actually too slow. I have an Intel E6750, a Core 2 Duo processor with 2.66 GHz, and usually it's enough for almost every game, especially because I have a Radeon ATI HD 5870. So it's somehow a good combination, but obviously my system is CPU limited, the graphics card is way too strong, and now that I overclocked the processor to somehow get closer to the graphics performance, I realized that the game really changes when the CPU is overclocked. Well, I don't know what kind of system configuration you have, but I would guess that if you post your system configuration down in the comments and tell us how your steering wheel reacts or how your game controller reacts to your inputs, I would believe that slower CPUs with a good graphics card will end up being way slower, and the opinions of the game will be much worse than the guys with a slightly faster CPU and the same graphics card. Well, let's try this little comparison. So please post your system configuration down below and let's try to figure out what configuration seems to fit best for this game. I believe it would help every other gamer in the community to appreciate how good this game really can be, because with a good CPU it seems really playable. And then there's just one or two little mods and you have a game which is almost comparable to the real good simulations that are out there, but dated. Alright, so much for my little comparison. I hope you liked it. Please leave a comment down below about what you think of a comparison between real life and game life, and also subscribe to my channel. I would like that very much. Thanks for watching. I see you on the next Nugget Reviews.